Have you ever wondered why the men women respect the most, the men they secretly admire, rarely reveal everything about themselves? Why do high-value men always seem mysterious, like there's a hidden world inside them that women can't quite access? Before we dive deep into this, make sure you subscribe to the channel, like this video, and watch until the very end, because what I'm about to share will not only open your eyes to how high-value men think, but it could also completely transform your love life. You see, Marcus Aurelius, the great Stoic philosopher, left behind lessons that can help us understand this very mystery. He taught that strength doesn't come from showing everything. It comes from knowing what to conceal, what to guard, and what to reveal only when the time is right. Tonight, I'm going to share 8 powerful things high-value men hide from women, using Marcus Aurelius's wisdom and female psychology. As you listen, I want you to reflect. Have you ever revealed too much too soon? Have you ever lost respect in a relationship because you gave away your entire soul without leaving any mystery? Won their deepest pain? Have you ever fallen so deeply in love with someone that you felt safe enough to tell them everything, your fears, your struggles, your darkest pain, only to realize later that maybe you revealed too much too soon? Think back for a moment. Did you ever share your deepest heartbreak? Maybe a betrayal from the past, or a childhood wound hoping she would understand? But instead you felt her respect for you fade, even if she didn't say it directly. This is exactly why high-value men keep their deepest pain guarded. And Marcus Aurelius understood this centuries ago when he wrote, "If it is endurable, then endure it." Stop complaining. He wasn't saying men should suffer in silence forever. He was saying, strength is proven not by crying out at every cut, but by carrying your burdens with dignity until the right moment to share arrives. Let me tell you a little story. There was a man, we'll call him Adrian. He had just started dating a woman he really liked. She was beautiful, warm, and for the first time in years he felt hope again. On their third date, as they sat in a quiet cafe, he began telling her everything: how his ex had betrayed him, how his parents didn't believe in him, how he sometimes felt like he wasn't good enough. He thought he was being honest, raw, and open-hearted. At first she listened. She nodded. But as time passed, he noticed a subtle shift. Her admiration dimmed. The spark in her eyes wasn't the same. Why? Because in that moment, instead of seeing a strong, grounded man who could carry life's storms, she saw someone who wanted her to carry them for him. Here's the truth. Women admire strength first, vulnerability second, when you give all your pain up front. Without building the foundation of respect and attraction, you risk being seen as weak rather than courageous. Now, don't get me wrong. A high-value man is not a stone wall. He's not emotionless. In fact, he feels deeply, sometimes more deeply than most. But here's the key. He chooses when to reveal his pain. He waits until there's trust, until the bond is strong enough, until he knows the woman standing beside him can handle the weight of his truth. Think about it like this. Have you ever watched a movie where the hero never complains, never makes excuses, but quietly carries his scars until one powerful scene where he finally reveals his pain? That's the moment you respect him the most. That's the moment you feel connected. Why? Because he didn't burden you with it from the start. He earned your trust first. So ask yourself, in your love life, have you been too quick to unload everything? Or have you mastered the art of carrying your pain with strength, only revealing it when the time is right? Because the man who hides his deepest pain until it truly matters is the man women never forget to their next move. Have you ever noticed how some men talk endlessly about their plans? They'll tell you, I'm going to start this business, I'm going to travel here, I'm going to buy that car. And yet, months later, nothing has changed. Women hear these words, nod politely, but inside they're thinking, talk is cheap. Now compare that to the man who doesn't say much. He doesn't announce his next move. He doesn't boast about what he's about to do. He simply works in silence. And then one day she notices his life has shifted. His career has grown. He's leveled up. And she's left wondering, how did he do that? What else is he planning? That, my friend, is the mystery of high-value men. They hide their next move. Marcus Aurelius once said, "Be like the rock that the waves keep crashing over. It stands unmoved." What he meant is simple. Don't let the world dictate your rhythm. Move with purpose, not noise. Let me give you a story. There was a man named Daniel. He was dating a woman who was curious about everything. She would always ask, "So what's next? What are you planning?" Where do you see yourself in 5 years? Now, most men in that situation feel pressured to spill everything, to impress her with a big vision. But Daniel was different. He would smile, give a hint, but never reveal the full picture. He didn't say, "I'm working on a new business idea. I'll be investing here, and in 6 months, I'll have this much saved." Instead, he'd say calmly, "You'll see. I like to let my actions speak." At first, she found it mysterious. Then, as months passed, she saw him executing silently. He moved to a better apartment. He upgraded his lifestyle without bragging. He grew his business without ever announcing his hustle. And every time she saw the results, her admiration deepened. Why? Because mystery is magnetic. Female psychology tells us something powerful. Women are naturally curious creatures. They want to know, they want to guess, they want to uncover. When a man reveals everything too quickly, he kills curiosity. But when he hides his next move, when he lets her wonder, he keeps her engaged. She doesn't just see him as predictable, she sees him as exciting. And here's the hidden truth. A man who talks too much about his plans often uses words as a substitute for action. But the man who says less and does more, that's the man women respect. So let me ask you, how often do you reveal your next step? Do you tell people, including women, everything you're planning before you've done it? Or do you work quietly, letting results speak for you? Because remember this, a high-value man is not an open book. He's a mystery worth discovering, and that's why he hides his next move. 3. Their full financial reality. Have you ever met a man who brags about his money? The kind of guy who tells a woman exactly how much he earns, what's in his bank account, the price of his car, the size of his house. At first it might sound impressive, but over time doesn't it feel a little desperate, like he's trying too hard to buy admiration instead of earning it? Marcus Aurelius once said, "Wealth consists not in having great possessions, but in having few wants." In other words, wealth is not about how much you can show off, it's about how little you need to prove. High-value men understand this. That's why they never reveal their full financial reality to women. Let me share a story. There was a man named Samir. He was successful, quietly building his career, saving wisely and investing. He had money, but he didn't flaunt it. When he dated women, he never bragged about his salary, never explained his investments, never listed the figures in his bank account. He kept it private, not because he was hiding, but because he understood one truth: if love depends on money, it's not love. One day, he was on a date, and the woman he was seeing asked him directly, "So how much do you make? Are you rich?" Samir smiled gently and replied, "I live well enough, and I'm working to build a better future. That's all that matters." He didn't give numbers. He didn't give details. He let his lifestyle speak for itself. Now here's the interesting part, because he didn't overshare. She stayed intrigued. She watched how he carried himself, how he treated others, how disciplined he was with money, without ever needing him to brag. And that mystery only made her respect him more. Why? Because female psychology is simple here. Women want security, not spreadsheets. They don't need every detail of a man's wallet. They want to know if he's stable, if he can handle life, if he can provide safety without making money his entire identity. Men who overshare their finances often fall into a trap. They attract women who are there for the lifestyle, not the man. But men who stay grounded, who let their actions and discipline show stability, attract women who are there for who they truly are. Ask yourself honestly, have you ever tried to impress a woman by oversharing your money situation? Did you ever talk about your job title, your income, or your possessions to get her attention? And did it actually deepen attraction? Or did it feel like you were performing? Here's the truth. A high-value man doesn't need to announce his worth. His presence speaks louder than his paychecks. His discipline shines brighter than his possessions. And that's why he hides his full financial reality. Because the woman who truly loves him doesn't need to know the size of his wallet. She only needs to feel the size of his strength, of their full past. When you fall in love with someone new, how much of your past do you reveal? Do you sit across the table on the first date and tell them everything? Your heartbreaks, your mistakes, your regrets, or do you hold some of it back? Marcus Aurelius once wrote, "Forget the past. The universe is change. Life is opinion." High-value men live by this truth. They know their past shaped them, but it does not define them. That's why they don't feel the need to reveal every detail of their history to women. Let me share a story. There was a man named Elias. He had lived through a rough past, bad relationships, financial struggles, and a few mistakes he wasn't proud of. When he met a woman he liked, he faced a choice. Should he pour out his entire past on the table, hoping she would accept him for all he had been? Or should he allow her to know him for who he had become, letting the past reveal itself naturally, piece by piece only if necessary? He chose the second. He didn't lie, but he also didn't volunteer every detail. He didn't talk endlessly about his exes, about how badly he was hurt, or about the failures that once weighed him down. Instead, he focused on the present, on showing her the man he had grown into. And you know what happened? She respected him more. She saw strength in him, not scars. Here's why this matters. Women don't need to know every single detail of a man's history. In fact, when you share too much too early about old heartbreaks, past betrayals, or mistakes, you risk shifting the energy. Instead of seeing a man standing tall today, she starts seeing the shadows of who you once were, and attraction fades. Female psychology tells us something powerful here. Women admire resilience, not overexposure. They don't want a man who is still trapped in his past. They want a man who has learned from it and moved forward. Ask yourself, have you ever lost attraction because you shared too much of your past too quickly? Maybe you told her about every ex-girlfriend, every bad decision, every painful detail of your struggles, thinking it would bring you closer. But instead it created distance. Why? Because you stopped being mysterious. You stopped being grounded in the present. High-value men know this. They don't hide their past out of shame, they hide it out of wisdom. They share when the time is right, and only to the degree that builds trust instead of destroying it. So let me ask you, are you living in your past, constantly reopening old wounds? Or are you living in your present, showing the strength of who you are now? Because here's the truth. Women don't fall in love with your history. They fall in love with your presence, your growth, and your vision for the future. And that's why high-value men never reveal their full past too soon. Of their full past. When you fall in love with someone new, how much of your past do you reveal? Do you sit across the table on the first date and tell them everything? Your heartbreaks, your mistakes, your regrets, or do you hold some of it back? Marcus Aurelius once wrote, "Forget the past. The universe is change. Life is opinion." High-value men live by this truth. They know their past shaped them, but it does not define them. That's why they don't feel the need to reveal every detail of their history to women. Let me share a story. There was a man named Elias. He had lived through a rough past, bad relationships, financial struggles, and a few mistakes he wasn't proud of. When he met a woman he liked, he faced a choice. Should he pour out his entire past on the table, hoping she would accept him for all he had been? Or should he allow her to know him for who he had become, letting the past reveal itself naturally, piece by piece only if necessary? He chose the second. He didn't lie, but he also didn't volunteer every detail. He didn't talk endlessly about his exes, about how badly he was hurt, or about the failures that once weighed him down. Instead, he focused on the present, on showing her the man he had grown into. And you know what happened? She respected him more. She saw strength in him, not scars. Here's why this matters. Women don't need to know every single detail of a man's history. In fact, when you share too much too early about old heartbreaks, past betrayals, or mistakes, you risk shifting the energy. Instead of seeing a man standing tall today, she starts seeing the shadows of who you once were, and attraction fades. Female psychology tells us something powerful here. Women admire resilience, not overexposure. They don't want a man who is still trapped in his past. They want a man who has learned from it and moved forward. Ask yourself, have you ever lost attraction because you shared too much of your past too quickly? Maybe you told her about every ex-girlfriend, every bad decision, every painful detail of your struggles, thinking it would bring you closer. But instead it created distance. Why? Because you stopped being mysterious. You stopped being grounded in the present. High-value men know this. They don't hide their past out of shame, they hide it out of wisdom. They share when the time is right, and only to the degree that builds trust instead of destroying it. So let me ask you, are you living in your past, constantly reopening old wounds? Or are you living in your present, showing the strength of who you are now? Because here's the truth. Women don't fall in love with your history. They fall in love with your presence, your growth, and your vision for the future. And that's why high-value men never reveal their full past too soon. 6. Their complete knowledge. Have you ever been on a date with Someone who tried too hard to prove how smart they were? Maybe they couldn't stop talking, showing off every fact they knew, explaining every little detail, correcting you at every turn. At first you might think, wow, this person knows a lot. But after a while, it feels less impressive and more exhausting, doesn't it? Marcus Aurelius once said, "The more we value things outside our control, the less control we have." High-value men understand this. They don't need to reveal everything they know because knowledge, when flaunted, loses its power. Let me share a story. There was a man named Victor. He was well-read, educated, and wise beyond his years. When he went out with women, he never rushed to show off what he knew. He didn't dominate the conversation, listing facts, theories, or philosophical quotes. Instead, he listened. He asked questions. And only when the moment was right, he would say something so precise, so thoughtful, that it left the woman thinking about it for days. One woman once told him, "You don't say much, but when you do, it always sticks with me." That's the power of restrained knowledge. You see, women are naturally curious. Female psychology shows us that attraction grows when there is a sense of discovery. When a man reveals all his knowledge up front, he becomes predictable. But when he holds back, when he shares in doses, he creates intrigue. She starts to wonder, what else does he know? What else hasn't he said yet? And that curiosity keeps her drawn to him. Think about it like this. Imagine watching a movie where every plot twist is revealed in the first 10 minutes. Would you even bother finishing it? No, but if the story unfolds slowly, with hints and surprises, you stay hooked until the very end. That's exactly how high-value men approach sharing their knowledge. Now let's make it personal.
Have you ever tried to impress someone by oversharing what you know?
Maybe you went on and on about your career, your hobbies, your philosophies, thinking it would spark admiration. But instead it created distance, maybe even boredom. Why? Because mystery is far more magnetic than complete disclosure. High-value men hide their complete knowledge not because they want to seem secretive, but because they understand timing. They know that the right word, spoken at the right moment, carries more weight than 1,000 words dumped carelessly. So ask yourself, do you reveal everything you know right away? Or do you let people uncover your depth slowly over time? Do you try to prove your intelligence? Or do you let it shine naturally through your actions and well-timed words? Because here's the truth, women don't fall for men who try to be the smartest in the room. They fall for men who make them feel something new every time they speak. And that's why high-value men never reveal their complete knowledge. 7. Their true strengths. Have you ever fallen for someone because they showed you a side of themselves that nobody else got to see? Maybe it was a small moment. A man fixing something when everyone else gave up. A man comforting a crying child with patience when the whole room was silent. Or maybe when he handled a crisis with calmness while others panicked. That quiet revelation of strength, it stays in a woman's heart forever. Now here's the interesting part. High-value men don't reveal all their strengths right away. Why? Because mystery isn't about playing games, it's about timing. Marcus Aurelius once said, "Waste no more time arguing about what a good man should be. Be one." Notice that? He didn't say, tell everyone what a good man should be. He said, be it. That's the hidden law. Women, whether they admit it or not, are drawn to discovery. The female mind is wired to connect dots, to analyze, to wonder, what else is inside him? What more can he handle? What is he capable of when life tests him? If you reveal everything about your strength, your discipline, your patience, your wisdom, your endurance, all in the first few weeks of dating, you take away that process of discovery, and discovery is what builds attraction. Let me tell you a story. There was a man named Daniel. To most people, he was just average, worked quietly, never boasted, never tried to dominate a room. His girlfriend thought she knew him inside and out. But one night, during a heavy storm, their car broke down on an empty road. She panicked, but Daniel stayed calm. He directed her to stay inside while he handled the situation. Within minutes, he fixed the problem, got the car running, and brought her home safely. That night, she looked at him differently, not because he bragged, not because he flexed his strength, but because she witnessed it in action at the right moment. That's what high-value men understand. They hide their full strength until life presents the stage. They don't walk around showing off, saying, I'm strong, I'm wise, I'm brave. No, they wait. They embody Marcus Aurelius's Stoic principle. The best revenge is not to be like your enemy, which means strength isn't about making noise. It's about being unshakable in silence. until the world forces you to act. So let me ask you, when was the last time you saw a man's strength not in words, but in actions? Did it make you feel safe, even loved? Think about that moment, because that's exactly why women fall harder for men who hide their strengths. They leave her wondering, what else lies beneath that calm surface? And remember this, mystery isn't deception, it's pacing. The more gradually a woman discovers your depths, the longer she stays curious, invested and emotionally attached. That's the hidden wisdom of why high-value men don't reveal all their strengths up front. 8. Their final boundaries. Have you ever been in love with someone and thought you could cross every line with them, test every limit, and they'd still forgive you? Maybe you pushed, maybe you said something harsh in the heat of the moment, and yet they stayed. But then one day you went too far, and they walked away. Do you remember how shocking that felt? That's the power of a man's final boundaries. Here's the truth. A high-value man may be calm, patient, and forgiving. He may let the small things slide. But there is always a line, an invisible wall he never explains in detail, and once you cross it, it's over. He doesn't yell, he doesn't fight, he doesn't beg. He simply removes himself. And that silence cuts deeper than any argument. Marcus Aurelius once said, "If it is not right, do not do it. If it is not true, do not say it." Boundaries are the living example of that wisdom. A high-value man does not shout about his standards. He lives them. He doesn't warn 100 times. He doesn't make threats, he just knows what is acceptable and what isn't. Let me share a story. Ethan was in a long-term relationship, deeply in love with his girlfriend. She admired his patience, how he never lost his temper, how he handled her moods with grace. But there was one thing Ethan never tolerated: disrespect. He never mentioned it directly, but his presence made it clear. One night during an argument, she crossed the line and insulted him in front of his friends. She thought he'd forgive her like always. But Ethan didn't raise his voice. He just stood up, walked away, and from that night onward, he never returned to that relationship. That was his final boundary. She later admitted, the silence of that moment haunted her more than any words he could have said. Now, why do high-value men hide their final boundaries? Because revealing them makes them weak. If you announce, "Cross this line and I'll leave," you've already given someone power. They know where the line is. A high-value man keeps it hidden. So when that invisible line is crossed, his walkaway becomes unforgettable. Women deep down crave this, not the pain of losing a man, but the security of knowing that he cannot be manipulated. Female psychology responds to consistency and firmness. She may test him, but when she realizes there is a line she cannot cross, respect is born. So think about your own love story. Have you ever lost respect for someone because they allowed you to push every boundary without consequences? And on the other side, did you ever admire someone more because they quietly enforced a standard, even if it cost them the relationship? That's why high-value men keep their final boundaries hidden. It's not cruelty, it's dignity. It's the ultimate Stoic lesson. Strength is not in controlling others, but in controlling yourself, wrapping it all together. So let's pause. We've just uncovered 8 things high-value men hide from women: their deepest pain, their next move, their full financial reality, their emotional triggers, their full past, their complete knowledge, their true strengths, and their final boundaries. Each of these lessons is rooted in Marcus Aurelius's wisdom and confirmed by female psychology. Women don't fall in love with men who reveal everything. They fall in love with men who reveal enough, but always keep something sacred, something untouchable. And that's the essence of being high value. Strength wrapped in mystery, love guided by discipline, and attraction built on self-respect. So I want to ask you, out of these 8, which one do you struggle with the most? Do you overshare your pain? Do you reveal your plans too early? Or maybe you find it hard to hold your boundaries?